Monday, October 10th, 1859. Mr. Harms came storming into the kitchen, sputtering and making a grand fuss. He made Eva May and me stop what we was doing and listen to him. "This has come to my attention," he said, holding up Spicy's Bible. "If it belongs to one of you, I want to know. Now." His eyes moved from face to face. "Speak," he shouted. He could have saved his breath. Neither one of us owned it. "I'm going to report this to Miss Lily when she returns," he said. "Yes, Mas Holmes," said Eva May. The tutor tucked Spicy's Bible under his arm. "Come with me, Clotee," he said. Outside the kitchen, he whispered matter-of-factly, "The view from my room is interesting." What did he mean by that? Tuesday, October 11th, 1859. After breakfast, I slipped into Mr. Harms's bedroom. Standing in the side window, I got a clear view of the woods, and especially the tree where my diary and Spicy's Bible were hidden. Thanks be there were no other bedroom windows at that end of the house. What is going on? Mr. Harms knows my secret for sure. He must have seen Spicy and me at the tree when she showed me her Bible. But why didn't he tell Miss Lily or Ma's Henley? I'm beginning to think there is more to this strange man than any of us really knows. Later that same night. My suspicions are right. Mr. Harms is not who he seems to be. When I went to move my diary from the hollow of the tree, there was a note fixed to it. "I know you can read or write. Please be careful. I will speak to you soon." The note was signed H for Harms. I hid my diary under my dress and hurried to find Spicy. I didn't want to put her in the heat of things, but she already was. It broke my heart to tell her that Mr. Harms had found her Bible. But it hurt even worser for Spicy to think I'd tattled on her. Even when I showed her how easy it was for him to see us through his window, she still didn't believe me. If that's true, then why didn't he tell Mas Henley? I had no choice at that point but to fess to everything. I took a deep breath and showed her my diary and the note Mr. Harms had left. Spicy took me straight to Aunt T. Daybreak, Sunday, October 16th, 1859. The roosters just crowed. Thank God it's Sunday and not a full work day. Aunt T, Spicy, and me sat up all night talking. There are no secrets between us now. I'm glad in a way. In fact, I am writing in my diary right here in Aunt T's cabin. At first, she was 'gainst my learning, but she say now that she was just scared, didn't want me beating her soul away. I will not stand in the way of what might be the Lord's work being done through you, child. She even said for me to hide my papers in her cabin. My diary will be safe with her. I worry that I've made life unsure for Aunt T and Spicy. If they get caught with my papers, we could all be in sinking sand. Maybe Mr. Harms will be able to help. But who is he, really? I got some ideas, but I dare not put voice to them yet. Later. Aunt T and Spicy don't think I should trust Mr. Harms all the way. But he hasn't done nothing to make me not trust him. I have looked at the one-eyed man's picture over and over. He don't look at all like Mr. Harms. But for after all that's been happening, I think Mr. Harms might know the one-eyed man. Mr. Harms isn't from the Philadelphia, the New York, or the Boston. He's from Virginia. Can a Southern master be an abolitionist? Mr. Harms said in his note that he would speak to me. Maybe I'll get the answers to some of these questions then. Monday, October 17th, 1859. Will you teach me to write my name? Spicy asked. I never really thought about teaching anybody else how to write. I've always been the one learning. I used the poker to write letters in the ashes. Spicy and Aunt T looked on with wondering eyes. For the first time, I've been able to share my secret with somebody. I love seeing them smile at the letters that makes up their names. I feel warm and good inside. What good is knowing if I can't ever use it to do some good? Spicy made nests, and Aunt T made a tea. We've had our first lesson. Tuesday, October 18th, 1859. Mr. Harms knows that I know that he knows I can read and write, but he has not said a word to me about it. Treats me the same as always. When will he speak to me? Meanwhile, Miss Lily ain't back yet, so our housework is not as hard. But Mas Henley been around all week in his study. I couldn't get ink out, but Aunt T helped me make a mixture of charcoal ash and blackberry wine. It makes a good ink until I can do better. Wednesday, October 19th, 1859. The days are getting shorter, and it's cool in the mornings during study time. Today, Mr. Harms changed the study time to early afternoon when it's still hot enough to need a fanner. I would say thank you, but I dare not. He says he will speak to me, so I got to wait. Sunday, October 23rd, 1859. Moss went to fetch Miss Lily from Richmond. We had the whole day to ourselves again. Trouble is, William wanted to come down to the quarters to the meeting. Mr. Harms thought it was a good idea. Of course we didn't, but what could we say? At the meeting, Rufus talked about the three boys in the fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Then Rufus sang a song. We all joined in. I looked over at William and Mr. Harms, and they were singing and clapping their hands too. My God's a good God, it is so. I woke up this morning, and by God's pure grace I go. Yes, God is a great God, this I know. We share a table the way we always do after service. Mr. Harms took William back to the house in his rolling chair. I stayed to be with Wook for a little while longer. All the smile is gone out of her eyes. I rubbed her feet because they were so swollen. That's when she broke down and cried, saying she hated her husband Lee. He got a pass to visit, but just came to say he didn't love her. Lee wants to marry somebody else. Monday, October 24th, 1859. Miss Lily is home. Lord have mercy. Moss and Hintz left the same day for races in Charleston. We all been busy washing and ironing her travel clothes. Scrubbing, nothing suits her. And she ain't stopped going on and on how filthy the house is. Tuesday, October 25th, 1859. I caught Miss Lily in her room at a good time, and asked her if I could stay with Aunt T in the quarters instead of in the kitchen. I knew just how to get what I wanted out of her. I say to her, Miss Lily, I was thinking if you let me stay with Aunt T down in the quarters, I can watch and know if somebody's talking runaway talk. She studied on that notion. You've never told me one thing about anybody. Why now, Clotee? I had to think fast and talk straight. I figure if I help you, then you'll give me nice things like you do Missy. That fooled her good. She let me stay in Aunt T's cabin, but I still got to work with Eva May in the kitchen and help Missy with the housework. It's a little bit like the way it used to be. Aunt T and Spicy and me talking all hours of the night. Now I'll be able to write more often and not cause suspicion. It's nowhere near as warm or as nice as a kitchen. When I write HOME, I see here in the cabin. Home ain't a place. It's a feeling of being loved and wanted. Wherever Auntie and Spicy are, that's home to me. Friday, October 28th, 1859. Been working all week. Today is the first time I've had a minute to write. Most nights I just fall asleep on my pallet next to Spicy. We all too tired to talk, but it's so good being back together again under the same roof, even though it leaks. Saturday, October 29th, 1859. Aunt T has found a way to be useful again. She made herself a job. All the hands in the corners work so hard, they'd be too tired to cook in the evening. So she's done started cooking for everybody. Whatever the folks can rake together, they bring it to Aunt T. She adds it together to make a bigger pot. They come home in the evening to a big pot. Today they had rabbit stew, wild turnips, and hoe cakes fixed by the best cook in Virginia. After last meal the same day, I picked up pieces of talk at dinner. Mr. Harms was telling Miss Lily about the Bible he'd found, but he said he found it down by the river. Yes, Eva May told me you'd found a Bible and that you were trying to say it belonged to her, Clotee. Why did you think it belonged to one of the slaves and not a member of the big house? Slaves steal so badly, said Mr. Harms. When anything is missing or lost, I always begin with the house slaves. They are the ones most likely guilty. Mr. Harms was sounding like a master. But when I looked closer, the Bible he showed Miss Lily wasn't Spicy's at all. Mr. Harms was helping Spicy and me, but at the same time finding favor with Miss Lily. I felt myself smile inside. Then Mr. Harms asked if Miss Lily knew that William had some feeling in his toes. She didn't know. She never takes time to know about such things. Mr. Harms asked if he could use hot water treatments on William's legs. Say he'd learned of the treatment from a doctor over in Washington. Only if Dr. Lamb says it's all right. Then he asked for Missy to help him with the treatments. No, said Miss Lily. Missy is attending to me. Use Clotee. Mr. Harms knew just how to charm Miss Lily. If he had asked for me, she never would have let me help. What is Mr. Harms up to? Monday, October 31st, 1859. It's shoe-wearing time again. I hate putting on William's old hard shoes. Eva May, Missy, and me just about harvested everything from the house garden and preserved, pickled, or dried it. The collards are ready to be picked, but Aunt T say wait till the frost hits them first. This is my favorite time of year, when the summer heat gives way to fall coolness. I can finally get a good sleep. Wednesday, November 2nd, 1859. Hints and Moss Henley came back home winners. They also had a fine new horse, a beauty named Canterbury's Watch. He's not as spirited as Dancer, but Hints says he's a strong runner, steady. Hints calls him Can, because he can run. Miss Lily came out on the porch, took one look at the horse, stepped back inside, and slammed the door. It was good to have Hints home. Although he spends most of his time with the horses, I miss hearing him laughing, and how the sound floats up to the kitchen from the stables. I told him I was staying in Aunt T's cabin, down in the quarters, but I still work up in the kitchen and big house. I'm glad you with Aunt T, he said. Somebody to see after her. Then Hints surprised me with a piece of red satin ribbon. It was as grand as anything Miss Lily owned, and it was all mine. Didn't have to slip and play with it. Hints says he bought it with money he won, betting on himself. I was going to wait until the big times to give it to you, but I couldn't wait. How do you like it? The word came straight from my heart and burst out of my mouth. Beautiful! Whenever I write Beautiful, I will see my red ribbon. It makes me feel pretty and like I want to dance and dance. Sunday, November 6th, 1859. Hints bought Spicy a measure of cloth, and Aunt T a comb for her hair. All three of us wore our gifts to meeting. All the women in the quarters was jealous, but Missy was so mad she didn't stay through the whole service. Rufus talked on love. Love is not jealous, he said, winking at the three of us. I should have been ashamed of being so proud of my red ribbon, but I wasn't. I just held my head higher. Monday, November 7th, 1859. Missy come in the kitchen waving a white handkerchief with purple and yellow pansies on each quarter. Lord, who is that girl gone and told on? Tuesday, November 8th, 1859. Missy told Miss Lily all about the gifts Hints had bought us, mad because he didn't bring her nothing back. Miss Lily took it straight to Moss Henley. Moss Henley rang the plantation bell. All of us come running to the front of the house. Moss Henley lead us to the stables. Oh no. Somebody was getting ready to get a beating. When Moss grabbed Hints, my breath cut short. How'd you get money to buy gifts, he asked Hints. I used the eatin' money you gives me to bet on myself to win, and I winned, he say, not feeling like he'd done no wrong. Moss Henley reached and got a buggy whip. Where'd you get the idea you could slip behind my back and place bets? He told Hints to lean over and hold on the wagon wheel. Hints couldn't believe he was getting a whooping. Neither could I. But, Moss, I didn't slip. I placed the bet free and open. Moss Henley beat Hints, give him 10 hard licks while we all was made to watch. I closed my eyes and balled my hands in a fist so tight my fingernails dug in the heel of my hand. I wanted to holler out when I heard the swish of the whip hitting my brother friend's back. Everybody knew Hints was Moss Henley's bread and butter, filled his pockets. If Hints got a beating, then what would old Moss do if we got caught doing anything? Anything. If it didn't have to be wrong, just something he didn't like. Moss Henley promised never to give Hints eatin' money when they was on a trip. Say he could starve to death. Wonder how Missy feels about herself now. Was getting hints of whooping worth that ugly handkerchief? We used to let Missy get away with fighting and hitting, because we thought she was pretty and all. I even wanted to be like her. But if being pretty means being that ugly inside, then Lord let me stay plain. Aunt T always say what go around come around. Missy's got it coming for what she did. Wednesday, November 9th, 1859. Aunt T took care of Hince's wounds. The buggy whip cut his skin, but not as deep as cat o' nine. Hince was shamed. At first, shame of being whooped in front of everybody. Being a winning jockey didn't help him none. Moss Henley beat him just the same. Spicy and me tried to cheer him up by talking about Moss Henley in the worst way. He felt some better. I could see it in his face. One day when the abolitionists come, they will stop all this beating. I wonder how far off that day is. Friday, November 11th, 1859. It rained all day. A slow rain. Turned cold afterwards. Miss Lily called me to her room. Then we went up in the attic. There were all kinds of boxes up there, things I'd never seen before. Dresses, coats, hats. It smelled of oil, and the dust made me sneeze. Miss Lily opened a creaky trunk and pulled out a pair of shoes and a dress that must belong to her daughter. She handed them to me. I had never had no real shoes or a pretty dress. Just the plain white pullovers Aunt T switched up for me. Your mamma made this dress for my Clarissa when she was a girl. Now you can have it. I quick put the shoes on. They were a little big, but much softer than Williams's big shoes. My toes had plenty of room and the sides weren't rough and hard. I put the dress on. I felt like it had been mine all along, because Mamma had made it. I buried my face in it and tried to smell Mamma, but it just made me sneeze more. Miss Lily was almost a person, but I had to keep my wits about me. She wasn't nice just to be nice. She was up to something. When I showed Aunt T and Spicy what Miss Lily had give me, they looked at me with wondering faces. I didn't tell her nothing, honest. They believed me, but warned me to be careful like. Saturday, November 12th, 1859. This study season would have been over for me, because it's been too cold to fan. If it hadn't been for those hot water treatments Mr. Harms has given to William, my learning would have ended like before. But Mr. Harms got me helping during study time. Still not a word from Mr. Harms. He sees me every day, but he walks right by me. I might as well be a shadow person. Wonder, will the treatments really do William any good? Saturday, November 13th, 1859. I just hurried back to Aunt T's cabin to write what I'd just seen. I was going back to the kitchen from the quarters a while ago when I seen Mr. Harms going into the woods. I followed him all the way down to the river, being quiet as I could. He put his hands to his mouth and made the sound of a bird. In a few minutes I heard the same sound. Then out of the river mist stepped a ghostly-looking man. As the moon slipped from behind a cloud, I got a good look. He was the one-eyed man in the picture, the abolitionist. No ghost at all, but in the flesh. My heart was beating in my chest so hard, I was sure they could hear it. I wanted to run out and tell the one-eyed man that he was my hero, like the long-ago Hercules that Mr. Harms had read about. I wanted to tell the one-eyed man that I was an abolitionist too, and that I wanted to get rid of slavery just like him. But I decided to just watch and listen. I know now that Mr. Harms is in with the abolitionists for sure. That means that not all abolitionists are from the Philadelphia, the New York, or the Boston. They come from everywhere, even from the South, even from Virginia. If Mr. Harms was an abolitionist, then what was he doing here at Belmont? Might it have something to do with slaves running away on that railroad that's underground? Monday, November 14th, 1859. Hince came to Aunt T's cabin after the dinner meal, none the worse for the beating he took. Licks heal real fast on the outside, but they're a whole lot harder to heal inside. We could hear Rufus singing down in the quarters. coming for to carry me home. Sunday, November 20th, 1859. Today we had a meeting in the quarters, same as always. I wore my new dress, Mama's dress. Everybody say how nice I looked. I tried real hard not to be puffed up, but when Missy came, I just had to strut a little. Pride go for a fall, Rufus whispered in my ear. Then he winked. Hints came to meeting and sat side of Spicy. Wherever Spicy is these days, Hints ain't far behind. Rufus preached about Elijah, who was taken to heaven in a fiery chariot. Home means freedom when we sing. So Rufus' story is telling us we're going to go to freedom one day soon. I thought about Mr. Harms and the One-Eyed Man and the Underground Railroad. Was somebody getting ready to run? We closed singing,
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Lord Jordan, and what did I see? Coming forth to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home.
Later. Wilk came to Aunt T's cabin late this evening to talk to us. Times had changed. We hardly knew what to say to each other anymore. Wilk did a good part of the talking, remembering mostly. She teased me about the time we were playing hiding, and I hid in some poison ivy. That made us all laugh. Then Wilk said she had to go. Goodbye, she say, hugging Aunt T and Spicy. When she hugged me, she whispered softly, "Pray for me." I haven't said anything to anybody, but Wilk is getting ready to run, and the One-Eyed Man and Mr. Harms are probably helping her. Don't know how I know it, but I do. I do. Monday, November 21st, 1859. Things have been in an uproar all morning. Moss Henley can't be reasoned with. I was right. Rufus, Aggie, Wook, and the baby ran away last night. They just up and flew away. Moss Henley made a promise. I'll free anybody who brings me information about Rufus and who helped him. Think of it, your freedom. I swear it. This ain't bound no handkerchief. Moss Henley is promising freedom. If I told him everything I know about Mr. Harms and the One-Eyed Man, I could be free. Free. The idea is tempting. My God, I can't believe I just had that thought. How could I even think of doing such a thing? I couldn't tell him, Mr. Harms. I know there are people here at Belmont who would turn in their dear mamas for a piece of meat, let alone freedom. Lord, put that ugly idea out of my mind forever and ever. Amen. Tuesday, November 22nd, 1859. Moss Henley and a group of men went out looking for Rufus and his family. Rufus was the only person who was ever dared to run away from Belmont, and we wanted him to make it, even though we couldn't say it. Not even to each other. There was lots of singing about heaven, but we all know heaven is freedom. Our hopes were crushed like fall leaves neath our feet when Moss Henley got back this evening. Moss Henley called all of us to him. He threw bloody pants and a shirt on the ground before us. "They're dead." He spat out the words like bad fruit. "All 'em. We had to shoot Rufus. The others drowned in the river when the boat they was in turned over. Current took them under. Rufus? Aggie? Wook? Baby Noah? All dead? What happened to the railroad that takes slaves to freedom? Didn't the one-eyed man help Rufus and his family? From this day forward, Moss Henley say we ain't 'lowin' no more Sunday meetings, and we can't speak of Rufus or any members of his family. Moss might be able to tell us what we can do with our bodies, but he can't tell me what to feel, what to think. I will remember Rufus and his family as long as I live, and he can't stop me. Later that same night, even though Moss Henley has forbidden us to gather, we mourn the loss of our friends in our own way. We raised our voices in song from our cabins in the quarters, from the orchards and kitchen, wherever we were. We didn't need to be together to share our grief. We sang our hurt. We clapped our sorrow. We never spoke their names, but we all knew we were mourning our own Rufus and Aggie, Wook, and little Noah. They were free at last. I got a robe, you got a robe. All of God's children got a robe. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my robe and shout all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven. Everybody's talking about heaven. Ain't going there. Heaven. I'm going to shout all over God's heaven. Wednesday, November 23rd, 1859. We woke this morning and the world looked like it's done been covered in a thin white veil. The first hard frost. Slaughtering time. Saturday, November 26th, 1859. The men slaughtered hogs for days. The smell of fresh animal blood turns my stomach, so I stayed clear of the slaughtering yard and stayed close to the kitchen where pots and pans clanked and banged. The noise helped drown out the sound of dying. As I write, the smokehouse is filled to overflowing with hams and sausage, bacon and ribs, all slow curing in smoke from smoldering wood chips. Later, Aunt T said just when you think you know the devil, he changes his face. Now I know what she means. I've always thought Mass Henley was the worst man in the world. But then come Briley Waite. Rufus was always in charge of slaughtering, but Moss Henley hired Briley Waite to take charge this year. He's common as dirt, tall and lean with sun-red skin, keeps a tangle of white hair hid under a beat-up hat. The cat o' nine that hangs to Mr. Waite's side tells me he's a man who keeps it close, because he plans to use it. Watching Waite makes me feel sick in my heart. There is something about him that frightens me way down deep inside. We made soap today under his watchful eyes. He sees everything. To me, he's a dangerment, like a snake. Sly. Sunday, November 27th, 1859. Thank goodness for good days. They take the sting out of the bad ones. Aunt T sent me down to the stables to get hints. When we walked into the cabin, it was filled with the smell of cinnamon and apples. For days, I've been slipping sugar, butter, flour, lard, careful not to get caught. Today I got the cinnamon stick, enough to make a small apple pie. It's first frost. Hintz's birth time. Just for you, I say, giving him a shiny black button I had found and polished. He promised to keep it always, and I knew he would. I don't have nothing to give, say Spicy. She stood toe to toe, eye to eye with him. Then she gave him a kiss, right on the mouth. I'm glad you was born. He let out a whoop that could be heard clear down to the river. We all had to laugh. At times like these we missed Uncle Heb. But while Spicy and I worked on the quilt, we told stories about him, and about Rufus and Aggie and Wook. That made us more thankful that we were together. Apple pie has never tasted so good. Monday, November 28th, 1859. Just as we feared, Moss Henley liked Waite enough to keep him on, pulled several men away from the tobacco drying sheds, and put them on the job of building Mr. Waite's overseer cabin. Moss Henley chose a spot that gave him a clear view of the whole plantation. He could see the quarters out his back door, and the back of the big house from his front door. From the left side window, Waite could see the kitchen and the fields behind, and from his right side window, Waite could see the orchards and woods. Clear to me, Moss Henley has brought Waite here to be his eyes. Tuesday, November 29th, 1859. Miss Lily sent for me today. She was lying in bed, say she had a fever. "So you like your shoes?" she say, groaning softly. I offered to get her some water. She called to me to stand closer. Then she grabbed my hand. "You like nice things, don't you?" I say yes. Then she come back with, "You can have lots of nice things, but you've got to tell me what I want." She asked me question after question about Mr. Harms. So many my head went to swimming, but I was real careful not to let on to nothin'. Wonder what's got her sniffin' around Mr. Harms like an old hound dog. Missy must have brought her a bone. Now she wants me to bring her another one. I say, "If I hear or see something, Miss Lily, I'll come to you right now." All the time I'm thinking, I'd never tell you a thing, 'specially not on an abolitionist. Wednesday, November 30th, 1859. All this time has passed, and Mr. Harms still ain't talked to me. But things have changed so much. I need to tell him Miss Lily is trying to find something on him. But it's like I ain't even in the room. During lesson time, I rub William's legs after they've been soaked in hot water. I'm still listening and learning all I can, but I wish Mr. Harms would talk to me.